Hi guys, welcome back. We're going to take a look at kind of preparing this object for animation purposes. And then what we'll do is take a look at just a few little bits of kind of basic animation. So we've still got our curves, okay, they're still floating around. What we'll want to do is kind of hide those. Now, if we're looking at maybe using some of these settings to animate these objects. So for example, if we're looking at animating the extrude distance and things like that, we can't really delete the history on the object and remove those bevel plus tabs, okay? Because that essentially will remove those options, so we won't be able to animate them anymore. Now, part of the issue there is that these objects are actually connected through the bevel plus and the planar projections to the curves. So if we do anything to the curves, it will probably affect the polygons. So what we're going to do is hide those curves. So what we need to do is basically select all the curves. Quick way of doing that, if we go to the Show menu inside our viewport and switch off polygons, basically it'll hide them temporarily. We can select all the curves and then add them into a layer. So inside the channel box here, go to Display and create a new layer and assign selected objects. And then what we can do is just turn those off and then come back and show our polygons again. So that way the curves are still there, but we've got just our polygons that we can select. All right, so at this point, basically, you can go in and add whatever materials and texture these however you want, okay? I'm not really going to go through that because I want to focus more on just the construction and then the animation. All right. Now, one of the things I do want to do here is kind of clean up these really nasty soft edges. By default, your materials in Maya will try and make particular angles nice and smooth. So that way, things that are supposed to look cylindrical, such as this surface here, where it's curved, it tries to make them look smooth rather than kind of blocky. The problem with that is that on your bevels like this, you kind of get these really nasty corners and these weird kind of bright and dark spots. So what we're going to do is fix that up. I'm going to select all of the letters and we're going to come back up to the polygon menu for a second. So we'll set the polygon or set the menu set to polygons. And we'll pop up to normals and we'll go set normal angle just here. Now the default setting of 30 should be fine. So what we'll do is just hit apply. You can close that off as well. Deselect, and now when you have a look at your objects, you'll notice that the curved areas are still nice and smooth, but any angled sections, like the bevels, are actually nice and well defined. Now, looking on here, I've got a little bit of an issue just here. We need to be aware that with the Bevel Plus tool, in the same way as the bevel tool, the regular bevel or extrude tool, it can cause these issues with corners overlapping, and that's where the vertices are packed too closely. All right, so basically what we would want to do there is maybe jump into the Bevel Plus attributes again, and perhaps reduce the bevel width or depth a bit. Okay, so if I bring that down slightly, that's the width. So if I go like 0.1, okay, you can see that it flares it out slightly. Likewise, you could maybe try the depth, so 0.1. All right, so it's kind of a balancing act. Okay, so you can see there if I go 0.2 and 0.1, it still overlaps. If I go 0.1, 0.1, it's okay. All right. And obviously you just need to try and get it as close as you can to what you need. Also bear in mind that that's occurring because of the number of divisions in the object as well. If you aren't going to be animating any of these settings, you can delete the history on the object and actually then delete those offending crossing over edges. That is an option. Okay, because obviously that's going to be a problem. If you are going to be doing animations with, you know, by adjusting bevel width, depth, extrude distance, things like that within these settings. You can't really move the vertices around to fix that, because moving them might kind of mess the object up when it animates. So just be aware that, you know, your corners can actually have issues with them. So if I try 0.19, yes, even that's not enough. It would have to go significantly lower. 0.15 looks like it's about right. And you can see there, it's giving me the artifact. And that's because that vertex is kind of still overlapping a bit. So 0.14, 0.14. So you can see there it's now slightly separated. Okay, so just be aware that those kind of things can adjust or affect your object. Okay. So yeah, if you need to add color and stuff, you can do that. Now what I want to do is just make sure that I've got pivot points and so on in the right spots. So let's just select an object and grab the move tool. Just make sure that that's kind of centered. Now if you want at this point, really what you could do is kind of center the pivot points on all the objects again. So you could just select everything and go, you know, modify center pivot, like that. Okay, so now what we need to do is kind of fix up anything like a letter I or a letter J that has separate pieces. Okay, so we've got the little stick and then the dot. For things like that, we really need to have them grouped. If we're going to be you know, doing extrusion animations and things, we can't combine them together because it'll possibly interfere with the way that the bevel plus inputs are kind of occurring. So what we can do basically is take that object there and group it. So we'll go edit, group, like that. And then what we can do is center the pivot point for the group, because that'll now be up in the middle of the grid. So we'll go modify center pivot, like that. And what you'll find, what some people will do is actually group every single individual letter. Sometimes what they'll do is do that plus each word as a big group as well. So with this particular group, I'm going to call that I, just up here, lowercase I. So then in this outliner list, that'll show up just here. Okay, so if you want, you can go through and group all of your letters, or your words, or both. Okay. I tend to find it gets a little bit tedious doing that, but I'll do it anyway for this example, and you can kind of see the results. So it's Control G, and then just you know, rename it up here. So with this, in this case, I've got M, so that's going to be that. If you've got like multiple letters like these A's, so I'll group that and call that A. The next time I get to an A, it should add a number after it. So we'll group that and we'll call that G. Then this one's going to be where it kind of wants to add a number in. So you can see that's now called A1. All right, G, Z. We've already got I, that's just there. Then we'll get an N. So we'll group that, call that N, and E. So we'll group that, the name. So these ones here, same thing. Keep in mind these are capitals, so I'm going to give that a capital H, capital Y, capital P, and then a capital E. Now up here, what I might do, because I'll often want to keep these together as a single piece, what I'll do is group each one of those individually. So I'll call that square, and I'll call that circle. So I'll group, I'll group that as well. So I'm just hitting Control G for grouping. I'll call that circle, like that. And then what I'll do is I'll take both of those groups just there, okay, and I'll group those two together. So I'll hit Control G again, and if I expand that down, you'll see that they're actually in there. Okay, both groups are in there, and then the letters are actually inside those, or the objects are inside those. So this group here, I'll call that icon. I'm calling it icon because that's sort of a symbolistic, sort of a symbol-based item. The whole design, everything together, is what the logo, that's the logo, which is why I'm not calling this logo. All right. So when I want to move these things around, I want to use these groups. Okay, I don't want to actually just click the letters and drag those around, because that'll move the object. All right, now you can, in order to quickly select a group to move, if you click on the actual object, that'll select the object letter, and then if you use the up key on the keyboard, the up arrow, it'll jump up and select the group that's in. So you can select the E group by clicking the E and then clicking the up arrow, and that'll select the actual group. So when you're moving them around, that's the way you would do it. Now each of these groups needs to have its pivot point centered. So I'm going to select the first group, I'm going to hold down Shift and select all the way down to the bottom. Note that I've got the icon group unfolded, so it's selecting these groups as well. And we'll go to Modify Center Pivot. So each group now has its own pivot point at its own center. Like that. Now, I've got one that's out of order here. Not that it particularly matters, but it might make it a little easier for me to select them or find them quickly. So I can grab this group and use the middle mouse button and drag this down. Now note that when it encircles an entire object, it will kind of add that selection into that object's group. Okay. When you move in between, you get a single dotted line, and that will actually reorder it. Okay, so just if you're going to move things in here, just be careful. Middle mouse drag, and make sure you don't have a box of dotted lines. You want the single line before you let go of the mouse button, and that way you can just reorder those. Okay, so for the most part, that's pretty much our scene organized and ready to go. You know, so obviously, you know, make your adjustments to your you know, your bevels, and make sure they're all kind of nice and how you want them. You know, I'm running a 0.05 on these, so I might just do the same thing on these as well, just to keep it even. 0.05, 0.05, and the same for this. There we go. So the bevel on this now matches the bevel here, and the one below is probably a little bit smaller perhaps, but that should work okay. Alright, so I'm going to save the scene. Okay, it'll jump straight to the scenes folder, so it's File, Save Scene, and I'll just give this a name, so I'll just call this Logo Master. So this is the file with my basic logo in it, where I haven't animated anything. So if I ever need to get the original logo back, if I mess something up when I'm animating massively, I can always come back to this file. Okay, so that's the scene prepared, ready for animation. I'll leave this video here, so it's a short one, and in the next video we'll just have a look at some basic keyframing and a few different options that you can play around with for actually animating the logo. So I'll see you then.